I raised my little brother after our parents died and paid for his overseas education for years. Then he came home, got engaged, hosted a welcome home party, and told me he forgot about me. I am Maya Thompson, and for 12 years, my little brother Ethan was my entire world. Not because I had to raise him. Because I chose to. When Ethan was 10 years old and I was 22, our parents died in a car accident. One day, I was a recent college graduate trying to figure out life. The next day, I was standing in a funeral home holding my brother's hand while he cried himself to sleep against my shoulder. Everyone kept asking the same question. What will happen to Ethan? No one asked what would happen to me. But I didn't care. Because Ethan was family, I became his legal guardian before I even understood what that really meant. I worked 2 jobs. I sold my car. I moved out of the apartment I loved and rented a tiny place closer to his school. There were nights when I skipped dinner so Ethan could have the things other kids had. Soccer cleats, birthday parties, school trips, new backpacks. He never knew, and I never wanted him to. Because that's what family does. At least, that's what I believe. Years passed. Ethan grew into a smart, ambitious young man. He loved engineering. By the time he graduated high school, he had dreams bigger than our small town. He wanted to study overseas. The tuition was enormous. Everyone told him it wasn't realistic. But I remember the 10-year-old boy who held my hand at our parents' funeral. So I told him something I would spend years proving. You dream big, I'll figure out the rest. And I did. I refinanced my house. I emptied my savings. I picked up weekend shifts. I stopped taking vacations. Every month, I sent money. Tuition, rent, books, food, emergency expenses. Sometimes, Ethan would apologize. You've done enough, Maya. But I always laughed. One day you'll graduate, get a great job, and I'll finally retire. He'd laugh too. Deal. For years, we spoke every Sunday. No matter how busy he was. No matter how exhausted I was. Sunday belonged to us. But things slowly changed. Calls became shorter. Then they became texts. Then messages went unanswered for days. I told myself he was busy. That's normal. College life is demanding. Then he graduated. I cried watching the livestream. I couldn't attend because money was tight. Ironically, the reason money was tight was because I had spent nearly everything helping him graduate. Still, I was proud. My little brother had made it. A week later, he called. I got a job. I nearly screamed with happiness. Mom and Dad would be so proud. He went quiet. Yeah, then he added something that surprised me. I'm staying abroad for another year. That's wonderful, I said. And I meant it. But somehow, after that call, he became even more distant. Birthdays turned into text messages. Christmas became video calls that lasted 5 minutes. Sometimes, I worried, but every time I asked, he reassured me. I'm just busy. So I believed him, because I trusted him. Then, after nearly 8 years overseas, Ethan announced he was finally coming home. I was ecstatic. I started preparing immediately. I cleaned the guest room, bought his favorite snacks, even dug out old photo albums. I wanted everything perfect. Then, 3 days before his arrival, I received a phone call. Not from Ethan, from my cousin Sarah. Maya, are you okay? Of course. Why? There was a strange pause. You mean, you know about the party, right? What party? Another silence. The welcome home party. I laughed. Oh, the surprise party. Sarah sounded confused. No, the party Ethan and his fiancé are hosting. Fiancé, party, hosting. I blinked. Ethan's engaged. Sarah gasped. He didn't tell you. My stomach dropped. No, the line became painfully quiet. Then Sarah spoke carefully. Maya, everyone thought you knew. Know what? The engagement, the house they bought, the promotion, the party. I sat down slowly. Everyone, yes. I could barely breathe. When is this party? Saturday. Saturday. 2 days away. Nobody had mentioned it. Nobody had invited me. I thanked Sarah and hung up. Then I stared at my phone for almost an hour. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe the invitation got lost. Maybe Ethan planned to tell me personally. So I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, Maya. I smiled despite the knot in my stomach. Hey, Sarah mentioned the welcome home party. Oh, just one word. Oh, I haven't received an invitation. Yeah, another single word. Yeah. I laughed nervously. Did something happen? No. Then why wasn't I invited? He sighed, not sadly, not apologetically, annoyed, and then he said words I would never forget. Honestly, I forgot about you. Silence. I thought I had heard him wrong. What? I've been busy. You forgot about me. It wasn't intentional. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan, I raised you. I know. I paid for your education. I know. I supported you for years. I know. So how do you forget me? He sounded impatient. Why are you making this a big deal? A big deal. I felt something inside me crack. Not anger. Not yet. Something worse. Heartbreak. Then he said the sentence that changed everything. Look, Maya, people move on. You should too. People move on. After 12 years of sacrifice. After decades of love, after everything, I sat quietly, then I spoke calmly. Guess I spent my money on a stranger after all. The silence on his end lasted several seconds. Maya, don't be dramatic. But I had already hung up. And for the first time in my life, I stopped protecting my brother. I didn't cry after hanging up. Surprisingly, I couldn't. I just sat on my couch staring at the blank television screen while Ethan's words replayed in my head. Honestly, I forgot about you. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it was an accident. Not even, I'll fix this. He forgot me, the woman who spent 12 years raising him. The sister who postponed her own life so he could have a better one. The person who stood beside him when everyone else disappeared. I wanted to believe there was some explanation. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he didn't mean it. Maybe I was overreacting. But every time I tried to defend him, another memory surfaced. The nights I stayed awake helping him study. The mornings I drove him to soccer practice before heading to work. The birthdays I celebrated with homemade cakes because we couldn't afford bakery ones. The Christmas presents I bought using overtime money. The countless times I told him, as long as you're happy, that's enough for me. Apparently, it wasn't enough. Around 9 that night, my phone started ringing. It was Sarah. I almost ignored it, but eventually answered. Hey, Maya, I talked to Ethan. I sighed. Of course you did. He told me you two argued. We didn't argue. He told me he forgot about me. Sarah went silent. Then she said quietly, he actually said that. Word for word. Oh my God. I know. Maya, I'm so sorry. I leaned back against the couch. You know what's funny? I spent years worrying whether I had done enough for him. What do you mean? I kept wondering if I should have worked harder. Saved more money. Given him more opportunities. Sarah sounded heartbroken. Maya, you gave him everything. I laughed bitterly. Apparently not enough to remember my existence. She didn't know what to say. Honestly, neither did I. After hanging up, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I opened my old storage boxes. Inside were pieces of our lives. Ethan's elementary school drawings, his report cards, photos from birthdays, Mother's Day cards he made for me when he was little. One card stopped me completely. He had been 11 years old. The front read, to the best sister and mom in the world. Inside, in crooked handwriting, he wrote, thank you for never leaving me. When I grow up, I'll take care of you forever. My hands started shaking, not because I was angry. Because I missed that little boy. The little boy who once cried whenever I left for work. The little boy who insisted on saving half his Halloween candy for me. The little boy who promised we'd always be a team. Somewhere along the way, I had lost him. And I didn't even know when it happened. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of messages. Apparently, family gossip traveled fast. My Aunt Linda had texted first. Please tell me this is a misunderstanding. Then Uncle Robert, call me when you can. Then my cousin Emma, are you seriously not going to the party? I answered everyone with the same message. No invitation. Ask Ethan. By noon, my phone exploded. Ethan was calling. Again, and again, and again. I ignored every call. Eventually, he texted. Ethan, can we talk? No answer. Ethan. Sarah told everyone. People are making this bigger than it needs to be. That sentence made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because even now, his concern wasn't hurting me. It was people talking about him. Then another message arrived. Ethan, my fiancé is upset. His fiancée, the woman I had just learned existed. The woman who knew more about his life than I did. I finally replied. Me, congratulations on the engagement. 3 dots appeared instantly. Ethan, thanks. Nothing else. No apology. No explanation. No, I should have told you. Just thanks. That was the moment something inside me changed. For years, I had blamed distance. Time zones. Work. Life. But now I understood something painful. People don't accidentally forget someone who matters to them. They prioritize what matters. And somehow, I no longer did. Saturday arrived. The day of the welcome home party. Ironically, I had originally planned to spend the entire day cooking Ethan's favorite meals. Instead, I made coffee and sat alone in my kitchen. Around noon, Sarah called. You're really not coming. I wasn't invited. You know everyone knows that now, right? What do you mean? Ethan's getting grilled. Apparently, several relatives had asked where I was. At first, Ethan claimed I was busy. Then someone asked why I hadn't known about his engagement. Then someone mentioned I had paid for his education. Then the questions started. Lots of questions. Sarah lowered her voice. His future mother-in-law apparently asked who you were. I blinked. What? Ethan introduced you as my older sister. That's true. He left out everything else. I laughed sadly. Of course he did. Then Sarah added something unexpected. His fiancé looked shocked when Aunt Linda explained everything. She didn't know. Apparently not. For the first time all week, I felt genuine surprise. You mean she didn't know I raised him? No, she didn't know I paid for school. No, nothing. I sat in silence, because suddenly, the picture became clearer. Ethan hadn't simply forgotten me. He had erased me, not completely, just enough to rewrite his story. In his version, he was the self-made success. The hardworking immigrant who built everything himself. The tragedy of our parents was probably mentioned. But the years after, the sacrifices, the second parent who stood beside him, those chapters had been edited out. And somehow, that hurt even more. Hours later, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I froze. Standing there was a young woman with tears in her eyes. She couldn't have been older than 30. And beside her was Ethan, for the first time in 8 years. But before he could say a word, the woman looked directly at me and said, "You're Maya." I nodded slowly. She covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Then she whispered the words that changed everything. "He told me you were just his sister." And judging by the look on Ethan's face, he suddenly realized that his carefully constructed version of the past had just collapsed. For a few seconds, nobody moved. I stood frozen in my doorway. The young woman beside Ethan looked devastated. Ethan looked terrified. And suddenly, I understood something I hadn't considered before. This wasn't just about forgetting to invite me. This wasn't even just about the party. This was about years of lies. The woman extended her hand nervously. "Hi, I'm Olivia." I shook it automatically. "It's nice to meet you." Even though it wasn't. Not because I disliked her. Because I should have met her years ago. Olivia wiped tears from her eyes. "I'm so sorry for showing up unannounced." I glanced at Ethan. He couldn't even look at me. "Would you both like to come in?" I asked. Olivia nodded gratefully. Ethan quietly followed behind her. The house suddenly felt strange. For years, I imagined this moment. My brother finally coming home. Us laughing together, sharing memories, maybe embarrassing him in front of his future wife. Instead, 3 people sat in silence while tension filled the room. Finally, Olivia spoke. "At the party today, your aunt told me everything." Ethan closed his eyes. "Olivia, no," she interrupted. "I want to hear this." She turned back toward me. "Please tell me if any of this is wrong." I said nothing. She took a deep breath. "Your parents died when Ethan was 10. I nodded. "You became his legal guardian." Another nod. "You worked multiple jobs." Yes. "You paid for his education overseas." Yes. "You helped support him for years." Yes. "And you basically raised him." I swallowed hard. Yes. Olivia slowly turned toward Ethan. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" Ethan rubbed his forehead. "I just didn't think it mattered." Didn't matter. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was unbelievable. Olivia stared at him. "Didn't matter." He sighed. "I didn't want people feeling sorry for me." "No one would feel sorry for you," she replied. "They'd admire your sister." Something flashed across Ethan's face. Something ugly. Something I had never seen before. Jealousy. And suddenly, everything made sense. He wasn't hiding me because he hated me. He was hiding me because my existence reminded people that he hadn't done everything alone. And apparently, that bothered him. Olivia saw it too. Her expression changed. "Wait." She looked at him carefully. "Were you embarrassed?" "No." "Were you ashamed that someone helped you?" "No." "Then why?" Ethan stood up. "Because every time people hear our story, all they talk about is Maya." The room went silent. His voice cracked with frustration. "They call her amazing. They say she's incredible. They tell me how lucky I am. And after a while, I got tired of always being the little brother she saved." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Ethan," he looked at me. For once, I wanted something to be mine. My heart shattered. Because I finally understood. For years, I thought distance had changed him. But maybe it started much earlier. Maybe every compliment people gave me felt like criticism to him. Maybe every expression of gratitude from others made him feel smaller. And instead of talking about it, he erased me. Olivia looked horrified. "So your solution was to pretend she barely existed?" "I didn't pretend she didn't exist. You literally introduced her as just your sister." "Because she is my sister." Olivia stood up. "She's also the reason you're standing here today." Ethan looked exhausted. "I know that. Do you?" Her voice broke. "Because grateful people don't forget invitations. They don't hide the person who sacrificed everything for them. They don't let their fiancé spend 3 years believing they paid for college with scholarships." My head snapped toward her. "Scholarships?" Olivia turned to me sadly. "He told me he had scholarships and student loans." I stared at Ethan. "You told her that?" He avoided my eyes. "Most of it wasn't technically a lie." "Most of it," I repeated. He finally exploded. "Fine, yes, I lied. I was tired of feeling like everyone admired you more than me. I built a career. I worked hard. I achieved things. But somehow, every story about me became a story about you." Tears filled my eyes. "Because I loved you." His face softened immediately. For the first time since arriving, he looked ashamed. Real shame. Not embarrassment. Not annoyance. Shame. "I know," he whispered. "No," I said quietly. "I don't think you do." I looked around the living room. The same room where I helped him with homework. The same room where we celebrated his acceptance letter. The same room where he cried after our parents died. "You know what hurts the most?" Neither of them spoke. I never wanted credit. I wiped away tears. I didn't sacrifice my 20s so people would praise me. I didn't pay your tuition so you'd owe me. I did it because you were my little brother. Ethan started crying, and for a moment, I saw the little boy I used to know. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, no, he said desperately. You don't understand. He sank back into his chair. I've been ashamed for years. Of what? I asked. Needing you. That answer hit me harder than anything else. Ashamed. Ashamed of being loved. Ashamed of being cared for. Ashamed of family. Olivia sat beside him. You fool, she whispered. Telling people someone loved you enough to sacrifice everything isn't weakness. It's the greatest gift anyone can receive. He buried his face in his hands. I know, but I ruined everything. Nobody answered, because honestly, I didn't know if he had. Then my phone rang. It was Aunt Linda. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello, Maya. Yes. Her voice sounded furious. Where are you? At home. Good, because your brother's welcome home party just turned into an absolute disaster. I looked at Ethan. His face turned pale. What happened? Aunt Linda replied. Half the family walked out. And apparently, that was only the beginning. I slowly lowered the phone. Ethan stared at me. What happened? I put Aunt Linda on speaker. Her voice exploded through the room. What happened? That's what you want to know now. Aunt Linda. No, Ethan, you listen to me. Olivia sat silently beside him. I had never heard Aunt Linda this angry. You let your sister sacrifice her life for you, and then you treated her like some distant relative. Aunt Linda, I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. A mistake is buying the wrong gift. Forgetting the woman who raised you isn't a mistake. Ethan closed his eyes. I know. No, you don't. Her voice softened slightly. Your mother would be heartbroken. Those words hit him like a truck. He started crying again. Even after all my anger, seeing him cry still hurt me. Because no matter what happened, he was still the little boy I once tucked into bed. Aunt Linda continued. People started asking where Maya was. Then Olivia's mother asked why she'd never met her. Then Sarah explained everything. I looked at Olivia. She seemed embarrassed. I'm sorry, she whispered. This isn't your fault, I replied. Aunt Linda wasn't finished. By the time people learned Maya wasn't invited, nobody cared about the decorations anymore. Nobody cared about the food. Nobody cared about the speeches. The entire room just went silent. Ethan whispered, who left? Aunt Linda snorted, who stayed? Then she started listing names. Uncle Robert, Cousin Emma, Sarah and her husband, several family friends who had known our parents. Even Ethan's old soccer coach. Apparently, many of them left immediately. Others stayed only because they felt awkward. The celebration everyone had planned for months had fallen apart in less than 20 minutes. Ethan looked sick. I didn't want this. Aunt Linda sighed. Then what did you want? He had no answer, because I don't think he knew. After hanging up, silence filled the room. Eventually, Olivia stood. I think I should leave. No, I said gently. You don't have to. She gave me a sad smile. Thank you. Then she looked at Ethan. We need to talk. His face paled. Olivia, no. Her voice remained calm, which somehow sounded worse than anger. For 3 years, I've listened to you talk about honesty. You always said relationships need trust. And yet you've been lying to me from the beginning. He looked devastated. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. She wiped away tears. Do you know what hurts most? What? I would have loved your story. She looked toward me. I would have admired your sister. I would have been proud to join a family like this. Her voice broke. But instead, I had to learn the truth from strangers. Ethan looked completely broken. I'm sorry. I know. She sighed. But right now, I don't know who I'm apologizing to. Then she quietly removed her engagement ring. The room froze. Even I stopped breathing. Ethan, no matter what happens next, I need time. His eyes widened. Olivia, I love you. She started crying. But I don't recognize the man sitting in front of me. And with that, she walked toward the door. I immediately followed her outside. Olivia, she turned around. I'm so embarrassed. You didn't do anything wrong. But everyone probably thinks. Nobody blames you. Fresh tears filled her eyes. I genuinely didn't know. I believe you. She hugged me unexpectedly. And somehow, the woman I had known for less than an hour felt more sincere than my own brother. I'm sorry you met me like this, she whispered. I hugged her back. I'm sorry too. She left. And I returned inside. Ethan was sitting alone. Completely. Motionless. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he looked up. She left. I nodded. I know. Everyone hates me. I sat across from him. No. Yes, they do. They're disappointed. Same thing. No. I looked directly at him. If they hated you, they wouldn't care. He started crying again. I ruined my relationship. You damaged it. Same thing. Not necessarily. He shook his head. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. He stared at the floor. When I first moved overseas, people kept asking about my family. I listened quietly. When I told them my story, they always reacted the same way. What do you mean? They'd say things like, wow, your sister is incredible. Your sister is amazing. Your sister saved you. He laughed bitterly, and after hearing that hundreds of times, I started feeling invisible. My heart hurt for him. Not because his actions were right. Because I finally understood where the pain came from. He wasn't evil. He was insecure, and insecurity had slowly turned into resentment. I should have talked to you, he whispered. Yes, but I didn't know how. You could have tried. I know. He looked around the house. Everything here reminds me of mom and dad. His voice cracked. And you. I stayed silent. I think I stopped calling because every conversation reminded me of what I owed you. That sentence hurt, not because of money, because I never wanted him to feel indebted. Ethan, he looked up. You never owed me anything. His face crumpled. Then why do I feel like I failed you? I swallowed hard, because somewhere along the way, you confused gratitude with debt. He stared at me, and I continued. Gratitude says thank you. Debt says I owe you. I never wanted debt. I wanted a brother. At that moment, Ethan completely broke down. Not quiet tears, not sniffles. Years of guilt poured out of him all at once. And honestly, I cried too, because for the first time in years, we were finally telling the truth. But healing wasn't going to happen overnight. And neither of us knew that an even bigger surprise was waiting. The next morning, at exactly 8:30 a.m., someone knocked on my door. When I opened it, I nearly dropped my coffee. Standing outside was a woman I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. A woman who was supposed to have disappeared from our lives forever. My mother's older sister, Aunt Rebecca, the same woman who refused to take Ethan in after our parents died. The same woman who told everyone she wasn't ready for children. And judging by the expensive car parked outside, she hadn't come empty-handed. She looked directly at me and said, I think it's time I tell both of you the truth about your parents. And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about our family changed. For a moment, I genuinely thought I was imagining things. Aunt Rebecca stood on my porch like a ghost from another life. 20 years, that was how long it had been since I'd last seen her. Back then, after our parents died, she attended the funeral, hugged us both, and disappeared. No phone calls, no birthday cards, nothing. As far as I was concerned, she had chosen her own life over us. So seeing her standing there now felt surreal. Ethan appeared behind me. The moment he recognized her, his face darkened. You've got some nerve showing up here. Rebecca looked older than I remembered. Gray streaks ran through her hair, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't existed before. But the guilt in her expression was unmistakable. I deserve that, she said quietly. What do you want? I asked. She glanced between us. Please, just give me 10 minutes. Ethan laughed bitterly. You had 20 years. 20 years and 10 minutes are very different things, she replied softly. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. Come in. We sat around the kitchen table. The same table where Ethan used to do homework. The same table where I once stretched grocery money to feed us both. Rebecca looked around the room and tears filled her eyes. You kept the house. It was our home, I replied. She nodded slowly. Then she reached into her purse and removed a thick envelope. I didn't come here to ask for forgiveness. Good, Ethan muttered. I came because your father made me promise something. That got my attention. My father, she nodded. 2 months before the accident, your parents updated their wills. I frowned. We already knew about the wills. No, she said gently. You knew part of them. The room fell silent. She slid the envelope across the table. Inside were copies of legal documents, old letters, bank statements, and one sealed envelope with my father's handwriting on it. My hands started shaking. Dad wrote this. Yes, he left us a letter. Rebecca nodded. He left several. Ethan looked stunned. Why didn't we get them? Rebecca closed her eyes. Because I kept them. The room exploded. You what? Ethan shouted. For the first time since arriving, Rebecca raised her voice. Because I was trying to protect you. Protect us from our own parents. I asked angrily. No, protect you from the truth. I stared at her. What truth? Rebecca wiped away tears. The accident wasn't supposed to happen. Neither Ethan nor I understood. What does that mean? I asked. She took a deep breath. Your parents were planning to tell you they were separating. I felt the blood drain from my face. No, yes. Ethan looked completely shocked. Mom and Dad were getting divorced. Rebecca nodded sadly. They'd been struggling for years. But they loved each other, I whispered. They did. Then why? Sometimes love isn't enough. The words broke something inside me. For my entire life, I had believed our parents had a perfect marriage. Apparently, I had been wrong. Rebecca continued. Your father was preparing to move temporarily for work. Your mother planned to stay here with both of you. They wanted to separate peacefully. They even attended counseling. I sat there in disbelief. Why hide this from us? Because after the accident, I thought you had suffered enough. She looked directly at me. You were 22 years old. You had just lost both parents. And suddenly, you were raising a 10-year-old boy. I couldn't bear the thought of destroying your memories too. Ethan spoke quietly. So you lied. Yes. For 20 years. Yes. Nobody spoke. Finally, Rebecca slid the sealed letter toward me. Father asked me to give this to you when you turn 30. I looked up sharply. I'm 34. She nodded, tears running down her face. I know. Why now? Because I was a coward. Her voice trembled. And because last week I saw photos from Ethan's party online. I saw people talking about Maya. I learned what she sacrificed. And I realized I had spent 20 years running from my guilt. Ethan folded his arms. You still abandoned us. Yes. I'll regret that until the day I die. The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. No excuses. No blaming circumstances. Just regret. Then she looked at me. Maya, I wanted to take you both. I blinked. What? After the funeral, I offered. I stared at her. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. I turned toward Ethan. He looked just as confused. Rebecca reached into the envelope again and removed another document. A court record. My name was on it. And beneath it, my signature, dated 20 years ago. I couldn't breathe. I don't understand. Her eyes filled with tears. You refused. The world seemed to stop. No, you told the judge you wanted to raise Ethan yourself. Suddenly memories flooded back. The lawyer's office, stacks of papers, people asking questions. But I had been in shock. Most of those days were blurry. I thought nobody wanted us. Rebecca shook her head. No, I wanted you with me. But you stood up and said Ethan had already lost enough. Her voice cracked. You said you wouldn't let him lose his sister too. Ethan started crying. I sat frozen. Because I genuinely didn't remember. Not clearly. Maybe trauma had buried those memories. Maybe I simply couldn't process them back then. Rebecca looked at Ethan. Your sister chose you. Then she turned toward me. And I've spent 20 years feeling guilty because I let you. I looked down at the old documents. My signature, my father's handwriting, pieces of a past I barely remembered. And then I noticed one final paper. A bank account statement. Dad's trust fund. I whispered. Rebecca nodded. There was money. I stared at her. What money? Your parents left money for both of you. Ethan and I looked at each other. Neither of us had ever received anything. My voice turned cold. Rebecca, where did it go? Her face immediately changed, and suddenly, she looked terrified. It wasn't me. The room went silent. If not you, then who? I asked. Rebecca swallowed hard. The attorney handling the estate. My stomach dropped. He stole it. No, she looked absolutely shaken. He disappeared, and according to the records she had finally uncovered, nearly $800,000 intended for Ethan and me had vanished without a trace. Nobody spoke for several seconds. $800,000. The number echoed in my head. Not because I suddenly cared about becoming rich, but because of what that money represented. Years of struggle, years of overtime, years of skipped meals, second jobs, and sleepless nights. If that money had been there, maybe I wouldn't have refinanced the house. Maybe I could have finished graduate school. Maybe Ethan could have studied overseas without me sacrificing everything. Maybe our lives would have been completely different. Ethan looked pale. 800,000. Rebecca nodded slowly. That was the estimated value after the insurance settlements, investments, and savings. I stared at her, and nobody thought to tell us. Rebecca wiped her eyes. I thought the attorney had handled everything. What attorney? Ethan asked. Richard Callahan. The name meant nothing to me. He was your parents' estate lawyer. Rebecca opened another folder. After the funeral, he assured me everything was under control. He said the trust accounts would remain protected until both of you reached the proper age. When I checked years later, his office was gone. My heart sank. Gone. Completely. No employees. No forwarding address. Nothing. Ethan frowned. How is that possible? I don't know. She looked ashamed. I should have investigated sooner. The kitchen became silent again. Eventually, Ethan spoke. Why bring this up now? Rebecca looked directly at him. Because 6 months ago, I hired a private investigator. Both of us stared at her. You what? She nodded. I wanted answers. And, her expression changed. The investigator found Callahan. I leaned forward. Where? Arizona. Living under another name. Ethan nearly jumped out of his chair. Then call the police. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears again. I already did. The room fell silent. And, he died 3 months ago. My heart dropped. No arrest. No trial. No answers. Nothing. Just gone. Ethan punched the table in frustration. That's it. He steals almost $1 million and just dies. Rebecca looked exhausted. Apparently, yes. I sat quietly. The money was gone. But strangely, I didn't feel angry. At least not about the money. I was angry about time. Time nobody could return. Years nobody could give back. Dreams that had been delayed. And suddenly, I started laughing. Everyone looked at me. Maya, Ethan asked carefully. I shook my head. Do you know what's funny? Nobody answered. I spent years blaming myself. I laughed again, though tears filled my eyes. I thought I wasn't working hard enough. I thought I should have earned more. I thought I failed you. Ethan looked devastated. You didn't fail me. No. I smiled sadly, because apparently Mom and Dad had already taken care of us. Rebecca whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? For everything. For leaving. For waiting. For being a coward. And for the first time since she arrived, I believed her, not because excuses made her actions acceptable, but because regret was written all over her face. Then Ethan suddenly stood. I'm going for a walk. Without another word, he left the house. Rebecca looked worried. Should someone go after him? I shook my head. No, he needs time. After she left later that afternoon, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by old documents, old memories, old pain, and for the first time in years, I felt exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. I had spent so much of my life taking care of everyone else that I didn't even know how to take care of myself. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Olivia. Can we talk? I hesitated before replying. Of course. Half an hour later, she arrived. She looked tired. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. We sat outside on the porch. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, she asked, how's Ethan? I smiled weakly. Complicated. She nodded. Same. Then she surprised me. Can I ask you something? Sure. Were you angry at me? Never. Really. Olivia, you didn't lie to me. She looked relieved. Then she said something unexpected. You know, when your aunt told me what you did for Ethan, I cried. I laughed softly. Why? Because my father abandoned us when I was little. I blinked. What? My mom raised me alone. She looked down. I know what sacrifice looks like. For the first time, I understood why she had reacted so strongly. She wasn't just shocked by Ethan's lies. She had lived through something similar. I still love him, she admitted quietly. But I don't know if I trust him. I nodded. That's fair. Then she smiled sadly. You know what bothers me most? What? He talks about you the way people talk about heroes. I frowned. Really? Yes. He always says you're the strongest person he knows. He says nobody sacrifices like you. He says he wouldn't be alive without you. I stared at her, but he hid me. Exactly. She sighed. I think he admired you so much that eventually he started comparing himself to you. That thought hurt, because it sounded true, and maybe that's what made this tragedy so sad. He loved me, but somewhere along the way, love mixed with insecurity. And insecurity poisoned everything. As the sun began setting, Olivia stood up. I haven't decided anything about the engagement. I understand, but I wanted you to know something. What? She smiled. If Ethan and I ever do get married. Her eyes filled with tears. I'd want you standing beside me. My throat tightened, even after all this, especially after all this, and for the first time in days. I smiled, a real smile, but that peace lasted exactly 12 hours. Because the next morning, I received a phone call from an unknown number. Hello, a man's voice answered. Ms. Thompson, yes, my name is Daniel Brooks. I'm an attorney. My heart skipped. Okay, I believe I have information regarding the missing trust fund left by your parents. I froze. But that's impossible, the man replied quietly. Not if I tell you that Richard Callahan didn't steal all of the money. My blood ran cold. Then where is the rest? There was a long pause. And then he said, someone in your family has been receiving payments from it for almost 20 years. For several seconds, I couldn't speak. Someone in the family, receiving money for 20 years. That made no sense. Mr. Brooks, are you sure? I'm sure enough that I tracked down your number. I gripped the phone tighter. Who are you exactly? I'm an estate attorney. I recently took over several old files after a retired colleague passed away. And one of those files belonged to Richard Callahan. Yes. I sat down slowly. Please tell me everything. Not over the phone. My stomach twisted. Why not? Because I don't want to accuse anyone without showing you the documents first. When can we meet? As soon as possible. By noon, I was sitting across from Daniel Brooks in his office. Ethan insisted on coming. So did Aunt Rebecca. The atmosphere was tense. Daniel was in his late 50s, calm and professional. He placed several folders on the desk. I'll be honest, he began. This case is strange. Strange how? Ethan asked. Because Richard Callahan didn't completely empty the trust. I frowned. Then what happened? Daniel opened a file. Approximately half the funds disappeared. And the other half, he slid a page toward us. Monthly transactions. Regular payments. The dates stretched back almost 20 years. Every single month. My heart pounded. Who received these? Daniel took a deep breath. The beneficiary listed here is Rebecca Morgan. The room froze. I slowly turned toward Aunt Rebecca. Her face had gone white. No. Daniel adjusted his glasses. The account numbers match. The payments are documented. The recipient name is Rebecca Morgan. Ethan exploded. You stole from US. Rebecca stood up so quickly her chair nearly fell. No. Then explain this. Tears poured down her face. I swear to God, I didn't know. Daniel frowned. Mrs. Morgan, these payments were deposited into an account under your name. She shook her head violently. That account belonged to my husband. The room went silent. I blinked. Your husband? Rebecca covered her face. My ex-husband. The pieces suddenly started moving. Where is he now? Daniel asked. Rebecca laughed bitterly. Prison. Everyone stared. She wiped away tears. We divorced 15 years ago. He was convicted for financial fraud. Ethan's anger slowly turned into confusion. You never told us that. I never told anyone. Rebecca looked ashamed. When your parents died, my marriage was already falling apart. My husband handled our finances. I trusted him. Daniel flipped through another file. What was his name? Stephen Morgan. Daniel's eyes widened. He immediately started searching through papers. And then his expression changed completely. Oh my God, what? I asked. He looked up slowly. Stephen Morgan and Richard Callahan were business partners. The room fell silent. Rebecca looked like she had stopped breathing. No, Daniel nodded. They owned several investment properties together. Which means, he didn't need to finish. We already understood. Stephen had access. Richard had authority. Together, they had manipulated the trust. Rebecca collapsed into tears. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. And for some reason, I believed her. Because guilt and grief looked different. And what I saw in her eyes wasn't guilt. It was horror. Ethan sat back in his chair. Everything seemed to hit him at once. The lost money, the lies, the ruined relationships, our parents, all of it. Then he whispered, I'm tired. Nobody answered. Because honestly, we all were. After leaving the office, Ethan asked me to stop at the cemetery. We hadn't visited our parents together in years. The drive was silent. When we arrived, he immediately dropped to his knees in front of their graves. And for several minutes, he just cried. Not quiet tears, not embarrassment, not pride, just grief. 20 years of grief. I miss you, he whispered. Then he looked at Mom's headstone. I'm sorry. He looked at Dad's. I'm so sorry. I sat beside him. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he turned toward me. You know something. What? I don't think I ever properly mourned them. I nodded. Neither did I. Because we hadn't had time. I became a parent overnight. And Ethan became a scared little boy trying to survive. We spent so many years focusing on life that we forgot to process death. Then he looked at me. I was angry at the wrong person. I stayed silent. I think I blamed you because losing Mom and Dad hurt too much. Tears filled his eyes. So I focused on the person who stayed. That sentence broke my heart. Not because it excused anything, but because I finally understood. Children don't always know where to place pain. Sometimes they accidentally place it on the safest person. And I had been Ethan's safe place. For 20 years, he started crying again. I don't deserve you. I smiled sadly. Probably not. To my surprise, he laughed. A small laugh, but real. Then I added, but family isn't about deserving. It's about choosing each other. His face crumpled. I stopped choosing you. Yes, and you still love me. Unfortunately, he laughed again through tears. And for the first time since he returned home, it felt like my brother had come back. Not completely, not magically, but he was finally here. Then my phone rang. It was Olivia. Ethan. I handed him the phone. His hands trembled. Hello. Silence. Then his eyes widened. What? He looked at me in disbelief. Really? Another pause. And then he started crying again. After hanging up, he stared at the phone. I smiled softly. Good news. He nodded. Olivia wants to meet. I grinned. That's wonderful. He shook his head. Not just me. What do you mean? He smiled through tears. She asked if you'd come too. And suddenly, after everything we'd lost, maybe we hadn't lost everything after all. 3 days later, Ethan and I walked into a small cafe together. Neither of us had spoken much during the drive. Not because things were awkward. Because we were both nervous. Olivia was already waiting. When she saw us, she stood up immediately. For a second, nobody moved. Then she walked over and hugged me first. Not Ethan, me. I laughed softly. Hello to you too. She smiled through tears. I've missed someone I've only known for a week. Ethan chuckled nervously. I guess I deserve that. Olivia looked at him. You do. But then she hugged him too. And I saw something in both of their faces. Hope. Not certainty. Not forgiveness. Hope. The three of us sat down. After a few minutes, Olivia finally spoke. I don't have all the answers. Ethan nodded. Neither do I. But I do know one thing. She reached across the table and took his hand. If we're going to continue this relationship, everything changes. He squeezed her hand. Anything. No lies. Agreed. No pretending. Agreed. And no hiding your family. His eyes immediately moved toward me. I promise. Then Olivia smiled. Good. Because I happen to like your sister more than you. We all laughed. And somehow, after weeks of pain, that laugh felt like sunlight after a storm. Over the next several months, life slowly began to settle. Not perfectly. Healing never works that way. But little by little, things improved. Ethan started therapy. Something he had avoided for years. At first, he resisted. Then he admitted he should have gone a long time ago. I started therapy too, because I finally realized something important. Taking care of everyone else doesn't mean ignoring yourself. Aunt Rebecca remained in our lives. Not overnight. Trust had to be rebuilt. But she kept showing up. Birthdays, Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings. No excuses. No disappearing. Just consistency. And eventually, consistency became trust. As for the stolen inheritance, Daniel Brooks helped us reopen the case. Most of the money was gone forever. But several hidden assets connected to Richard Callahan and Stephen Morgan were eventually discovered. After legal fees and years of complicated paperwork, Ethan and I recovered a portion of the funds. Not $800,000. Not even close. But enough. Enough to breathe. Enough to finally stop living in survival mode. The first thing Ethan wanted to do shocked me. I want to pay you back. I immediately refused. No, Maya, no, it's not a loan. He looked frustrated, but I interrupted him. I didn't raise you expecting a refund. He laughed. You always say things like that. Because they're true. But Ethan had changed. I know. He smiled. That's why I wasn't asking. What? He grinned. I'm insisting. A month later, he paid off the remaining mortgage on my house. I was furious. Completely furious. For about 10 minutes. Then I cried. Then I hugged him. Then I threatened to murder him if he ever made financial decisions without telling me again. He laughed harder than I had heard him laugh in years. One Sunday afternoon, almost a year after his return, Ethan invited me over. As soon as I entered his house, I noticed flowers everywhere. Candles, decorations, and Olivia standing in the kitchen with the biggest smile on her face. What is this? I asked. Ethan looked nervous. Very nervous. Then he dropped to one knee. Not in front of Olivia. In front of me. I nearly screamed. Ethan, what are you doing? He laughed. Relax. I already proposed to Olivia again last month. Olivia held up her ring and grinned. I said yes. I hugged her immediately. Then I turned back toward Ethan. So why are you kneeling? His eyes filled with tears. Because apparently crying ran in our family. He pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a silver necklace. Attached to it was a tiny charm with 3 words engraved on it. Forever my family. His voice shook. When Mom and Dad died, I lost my parents. Tears filled my eyes, but I gained someone who gave up everything so I wouldn't lose my home too. He started crying. I spent years trying to outrun that love. And all I accomplished was hurting the person who loved me most. I was crying too now. Maya, he swallowed hard. Thank you for being my sister. Thank you for being my parent. Thank you for never giving up on me. And thank you, his voice completely broke, for choosing me. At that moment, every painful memory, every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment of heartbreak, it all became worth it. Because the little boy who promised to take care of me someday had finally come home. 6 months later, I stood beside Olivia on her wedding day. Exactly where she said I would. Not in the audience, not somewhere hidden. Beside her, as family. Before the ceremony began, she squeezed my hand. You know, she whispered. What? I think your mother sent me to your brother. I laughed through tears. Maybe. Then she smiled. No, I think she sent me to all of you. And maybe she was right. Because family isn't always about blood. It isn't about perfection. And it certainly isn't about never making mistakes. Family is about showing up. Choosing each other. Again and again. Even after heartbreak. Even after anger. Even after years of distance. Because sometimes people lose their way. But that doesn't mean they're lost forever. And as I watched Ethan waiting at the altar with tears in his eyes, I remembered the words written inside that old Mother's Day card from years ago. Thank you for never leaving me. I smiled. Because despite everything, I never had. The people who love us most aren't always the ones who are perfect. They're the ones who stay. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is choosing forgiveness without forgetting the lessons that pain taught us.